Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. The Pledge of
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's see, item 2, public comments. Anybody wishing to speak about some items not on the agenda, step forward. Seeing no one step forward, item 3, approval of the agenda.
So moved. I second.
Motion and second on the approval of the agenda. Any issues, changes, concerns? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye, opposed. Motion does indeed carry. Item 4, consent agenda.
So moved.
Motion and second on consent agenda. Issues or concerns? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye, opposed. Motion does carry. Item 5, alley closure. Kayla?
Yep.
Okay.
So before you this evening is an alley closure request submitted by Salads Bar and Grill. The event would take place on September 7th of this year. It's the same closure that Salads has done for a number of years here, and it's for the JC's Beanbag Tournament. So the start time of the event is 4 and it would end by 9:25. And so there's no need for a public hearing, just because the event ends before that 9:30 timeframe. So it would just be approval of the closure.
I move for the alley closure request.
Second.
Motion and second approving the alley closure on September 7th. Any other questions or concern?
Has anything changed from previous year's events, or it's the same?
Yeah, I mean, they moved it from the lot to Sal's. I think is the only difference.
Okay. That's my only question.
Motion second approve the alley closure for Sal's. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
And opposed. Motion does indeed carry. Zoning text changes coming back.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and councilors. I recall at the May 20th meeting, council voted to bring this item back. There was some concern mentioned regarding just limiting the changes to the industrial district. So therefore, staff has prepared a couple of different options for consideration this evening. The first option that we outline includes language that would allow properties in the light industrial district only to have more than one principal structure per lot. This language would essentially allow the use outright. So what that means is essentially it'd be no different than any other commercial or industrial new build. If we had an industrial new building, it would go through a process including site plan review and then building permit. So the first option would essentially be a more streamlined option, allowing the use outright through an administrative route. The second option would allow, and this also limits the properties in the light industrial district. It adds another regulatory step in the process. It would allow more than one principal structure per lot, but through a conditional use permit. So that allows the council to add special conditions or restrictions to that use. So therefore, in Mr. Bregelman's request, he would have to come back and then go through the conditional use permit, and then council can tie any conditions to that. The third option is to deny the zoning text amendment. If that option were selected, then Mr. Bregelman would go back to the options that staff had outlined in the beginning to him. And that includes either combining his structures into one building or to replat the lot so that each of those buildings are on their own parcel ID. So those three options are for your consideration this evening. With that, I'd be happy to answer questions. Kind of just an example too, and how things outlie as well. In like a commercial district where we have like your strip malls or that. Right now, our strip malls are all one contiguous building. Some of them are divided per tenant space into their own parcel IDs. while others are just under one contiguous owner. So again, in Mr. Bregelman's case, those are the kind of the three options, with the first two options being a text amendment and the third option being the denial, which would have Mr. Bregelman go back to those other options that I outlined. So, questions?
Nate, which of these options were here at our last meeting when the mayor wanted to table it?
So the first or second option would fall in line with that. The second option adds the additional regulatory step of a conditional use permit process. So in the case, if we do have these after Mr. Bregelman, or even for Mr. Bregelman, he'd have to get a conditional use permit, and then the council can tie specific conditions.
So at the
to that.
last meeting, which were one of these was option one, the one that was on the table that then got tabled?
So
Yeah.
yeah, basically
Okay.
what we did is we just limited the text to the industrial district only, per the feedback from last meeting.
That's the difference in option one.
Y-
Option
yeah,
one
so
just says this can
option-
happen only in light industrial.
Yeah, option 1 and 2 both state only in light industrial.
So my take is option three is not an option. Option two would be, why would we have Mr. Bregelman come back every single time he, for a CUP when he wants to do this? So I'm in favor of option one. It's not a motion. I'm just saying I'm in favor. of it.
I agree with everything that Kevin stated.
I concur.
So I move for.
Anybody
option
want to
one.
make a motion?
I move for option one.
So option 1 is ordinance resolution 2024-003. And then there would be the summary publication 2024-036. So 2 separate motions for that.
Yes, we got it. So motion and second, 2024-003, and that's approving the amendment which limits this to light industrial districts. Questions or concerns? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I abstain. Motion prevails 401. I need a motion on 2024-36.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second, summary publication 2024-36. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I abstain again. Motion prevails 401. Are we on 7 already?
Mhm.
7. Right?
Yes, sir. So, little background, little history on the deputy chief promotion, that I'm proposing for is last year in 2023. We ended up, you don't have to stick around for this at all. In 2023, we reviewed Mary Beth Munden's position of being a lead record specialist. We went through the DDA process, and so we also had them examine a deputy chief position, grade that accordingly, and then we added it to our budget. It was added to the budget for 2024, starting on January 1st. We were kind of a little bit busy. I wanted to do one promotion at a time. Then we got involved with Verkada. We got involved with all these other things going on and Axon and things are happening and stuff. And so as we're going through all that, I kind of looked at it and thought, well, a good time to start this person would be on July 1st. Why go mid-May or or April? This would give us time to get the person going before the students return. It would coincide with right before the 4th of July. One of the things that Councilmember Klusner had brought up when we were going through the job descriptions last fall, one of the questions he had asked is, what would the deputy chief do that I currently don't do? And my response was nothing. Everything that I do, everything that patrol officers do, I can do as well, whether or not you want me doing the activities they're doing. So Mary helped me this past week prepare, which was in your packets, basically about the majority of what I do outside of patrol duties, between enforcing traffic, responding to calls, that kind of things, what I would do that a patrol officer doesn't do. We also included what current sergeants do. One of my biggest goals would be to push my 2 sergeants that are kind of cheated in during the daytime to help alleviate some of these shortages that we've had, would be to move my sergeants to more of an evening supervisory area. So whether that's 3 p.m. till 1 AM, whether that's 4 PM till 2 AM, it would get us the 2 sergeants in the evening more. Take today, for example, we started out, we had an in custody felony domestic from over the weekend, and that became my highest priority amongst other meetings that I had going on today. What I foresee the deputy chief doing is becoming more of the manager of the patrol end of it and overseeing those areas as well. One of the things I think Kayla's got the slide, or kind of a thing that I proposed this morning, just kind of showing you from when I started in 2002, where we were through the end of May so far with our ICR count. It's kind of where we grade most of what we're at for call load, call volume. Obviously, when the fire department's here, they kind of say the same thing we do. Medicals make up a pile of it. I included in our report a lot of the calls that we had for the first quarter. Medicals is a big one. There's no doubt about it. As the city's population grows, and as we start putting in different assisted livings, your medicals are going to go up as well. One thing that you do see up there is if you go from 2002 to 2024, we're definitely not coming down at the rate that we're going up. Through the end of May, we're just about double in general from where we were 20 years ago. So through that, we've added patrol officers. We just kind of have to set up the next grid work for supervision so we can have the most effective service we can. Last week, I talked to Lori for a little bit. It doesn't mean we're going to ask for this next year, but one of the things that the mayor had tasked us with recently in the last year was to start thinking about the succession plan, start thinking about where your departments are going to go in the future years. And one thing that Lori and I agreed on is eventually, I think in my time here, we may end up looking at a community service officer. Some of the roles that officer may do would be to help Ryan out with some of his weed inspections and some of the stuff that Public Works does. It doesn't need to have a sworn officer with a gun responding to these calls. A lot of our cops right now are dealing with animal complaints and things like that, parking complaints, abandoned vehicles, all these kind of things. Nate sees a lot of stuff with ordinances, whether it be zoning or whatever else that a CSO could do. That would fall underneath the deputy chief position as well to oversee. It wouldn't be the evening sergeant position. As we continue to grow, we're going to need an investigator full-time in this department. That would fall underneath the deputy chief to oversee investigations as well. And then finally, eventually, with all the data requests, the videos that we're capturing and everything else, we're going to need a second Candy in her position down the line. It's not going to be tomorrow, but it's going to have to be addressed before it goes smaller. We're never going to lose the amount of data requests that are coming in. People are thriving off information. So I'd like to start with getting this in place. This is definitely a need that we're going to see and that we have already. Areas like Sartell, Sauk Rapids, Wade Park, they've all got these positions in-house already, and it's just going to happen sooner than later. So I think I've pretty much summarized. I know Lori kind of put in what the budget impact would be for the remainder of the year, starting July 1st. I know that one of the biggest things we're looking at is we don't have it budgeted for an outside person. So this would be like we did with Public Works. It'd be an internal promotion posting for 7 days. Assuming that one of the sergeants applies, we would then look to backfill a sergeant position from the patrol officers. And that's why I included the organizational chart. Right now we have Madison Honer, who is a float car. If it all goes in-house accordingly, she would then assume a regular fixed position. We wouldn't have a float car. In the case of a vacation or someplace we have to do that, the deputy chief would fill in for a daytime vacation spot or a sick leave, and our nighttime supervisors would fill in at that spot. So I don't see any changes coming that way where we'd be short. So I will open it up for any questions, or if I've missed something that you think is important, but otherwise I think that pretty much summarizes my request.
Counselors?
Bob?
For the amount of call volume that you're getting, Dwight, like the last 4 years where it obviously spiked throughout COVID and numerous other reasons. I understand with the police department, you get a wide breadth of calls, different types. I can anecdotally state from the fire department, like 90% of our calls are medical. Can you ballpark or spitball what you believe you're responding to specifically for medicals?
Well, I've got so this first quarter, I think it's in there what we actually had for medicals. Now, keep in mind, the one thing I did mention to David when I put this in the packet is the report that you guys are going to see in your packet. This was done just by pulling Stearns County's information in there. This is with Mary putting about a half hour of her time into pulling this. So if the call comes in as a suspicious activity, but later is found out that it's a dog just barking, Mary would normally go back through that and pull that out and then say, hey, this was actually a barking dog call. It wasn't a suspicious activity call. So you're going to see a lot of that where suspicious activity is 22, suspicious vehicle is 26, but it might have been an actual logical response what it was. But if she goes through and actually reads through those things and actually codes them correctly, it takes about 6 hours of her time. And then if nobody has any questions, we throw them away and she moves on, and that's 6 hours out of her time. So this is just a quick one. But like in this particular one, the first order for medical emergencies, we had 79 out of total calls of 900. So I don't know what percentage that brings out. The other thing I will add, being that you brought that part up, one thing that we do see a lot of it is behavioral health calls. And out of the behavioral health that we've got, those tend to take a lot more staff time. You don't just turn those over like you do with a minor consumption or maybe just a suspicious vehicle or a barking dog. Officers can be stuck on those calls for 2, 3, 4 hours. So it's kind of a tricky one there. And if you're the only officer on, that basically leaves the rest of the county to cover our calls. So that's kind of my big push towards getting some evening supervision so that there's somebody still around yet when an officer gets tied up on those calls. So I don't know if that 100% answers your question, but off the top of my head, I mean, 79 was this quarter. I don't know what past years would have been. I can definitely pull those numbers, but it's high.
It's not necessary, but thank you.
Mhm.
Anyone else? Bob?
Yeah, do you plan on, let's say it goes the way you're planning and you fill in the exit sergeant position with a in-house, do you plan on filling that position also?
So it would be kind of a chain of effect. So if one of the two or both of the two sergeants would apply, that would leave an open sergeant position. Assuming that, well, let's just go both ways. Assuming nobody applies for an open sergeant position, it's just going to have to stay open until somebody else. Because right now, and it's just personal belief, it doesn't have to be this way, but when I was hired and when I first applied for sergeant, the requirements were you had to be a full-time St. Joseph officer for 5 years. And as a chief, if I go to one of my sergeants and ask them, I need you to staff accordingly for the 4th of July. And the sergeant comes from Duluth and says, what happens around here on the 4th of July? Well, if you've been through 5 4th of Julys here, you know what our requirements are. You know what to expect. So I do believe that's an important aspect. Now, Sartell, they've recently rolled that back to having only 2 years of full-time law enforcement to qualify as a sergeant. I don't really want to go that route if I don't have to. I think there's some value into being a St. Joe officer for 5 years to be able to make those decisions. But let's say an officer doesn't want to apply that has 5 years experience. It may have to sit open until somebody does have 5 years experience, or we may have to look at rolling that back and saying, okay, anybody with 4 years or 3 years can now apply for it. And then once one of those officers applies for that open sergeant position, then Madison, who was just hired a year ago in March, would then fill that open officer role. So right now she's a float car. So she's the first one on the chopping block for anybody that calls in sick, vacation. So she really doesn't get a chance to look out and see what her schedule is 5 months out. Hers changes weekly. So that's kind of where that falls into, but everything would be filled in-house.
Okay, so from what I'm hearing, you're gonna budget for a position in 25.
Nope. We do not have anything on the books. The extra position that Madison currently occupies as a float position, she would go in, there would be no float position at all. I don't even know, Lori, if we've talked about when we're going to be adding the next full-time officer.
I get there.
Yeah.
She's like not in.
Okay, so there'll be no backfill
No backfill
for 2024
for no 2024. No.
and 25.
We haven't even started discussing that budget yet so far. I don't anticipate it, but we haven't even started discussing 25 yet.
Move to approve the go
Oh,
forward.
we're not done there, chief.
Well, I can make a motion.
So Chief, just remind me, do our sergeants go on patrol?
Not primarily is there, or I should say it differently. So it's not
Do
their
they
primary
have a
duty.
shift?
They do, yes. They
Okay.
currently work 11 at night till 9, or 11 in the morning till 9 at night, unless it's spring and fall when the students are active. Then they will shift up to working 4 at night till 2 in the morning. So
And they're in a squad.
they're in their marked squad. And if there's a call that comes out that it's a car accident, patrol officers that are freed up go first. And it's just kind of a pecking order. As it goes up, then this, if there's nobody available, the sergeants will then go. If it's a domestic or a priority call, then the sergeants would go to the domestic.
Will the deputy chief be on patrol?
Well, yes, it would. It'll be a uniform position and they would go on patrol, not as their primary duty. I want the deputy chief to focus on these other duties primarily, but anybody can go on patrol. Absolutely.
Where's the deputy chief gonna have his or her office?
Right now, what we're planning on doing is keeping it in the sergeant's office. We need to rebrand it because the reality is the two sergeants would work opposite of each other, so they would not be in unless it's a drop day where the schedules would line up. So, and then the daytime, the deputy chief, when we built this building, that was proposed for a 3-sergeant department in that office. So we're gonna cram, for lack of better words, we're gonna cram 3 supervisors in that room. So the deputy chief is the primary, it's gonna be a exempt employee, non-union, Monday through Friday. So basically, when the sergeants are in, the deputy chief may be in for an hour or 2 left yet, and then be done, so.
And the deputy chief is gonna take on employee evaluations.
The sergeants currently do already. They involve everybody from the patrol officers. Mary takes on Candy's position because she oversees her. I do currently both sergeants and Mary's position.
Okay,
So then if the deputy chief comes on board, the deputy chief will then do the sergeants and the sergeants will do the patrol officers.
and this application process, when we post it, would be open to more than just the sergeants in our department.
In
Yes.
order to be a deputy chief, you'd have to have supervisory experience already. So, but we can't post it for about 15 days because one of our sergeants is currently in Italy, and to post it for 7 days wouldn't be fair.
Okay,
So,
well, I guess my question is, when you post it, it's posted not just to people that would see it internally, but externally, right?
Nope.
Or do they have to be St. Joe 5 years?
you'd have to be a St. Joe employee,
Okay,
right? It just basically
Got
the
it.
same thing that we did with Public Works. Correct. You have to offer it internally.
I don't have any other questions.
Good, I only have a couple. So in 2000, St. Joe was about 4,681 people, and we had a staff of about 7.5.
Mhm.
Today, we have doubled that staff. We're at 14 plus, I'll bet, or thereabouts. And our current residence is 7,000, just over 7,000, and includes college kids as well. So, and I'm not being a naysayer here, but, and I understand the calls and all that. Want people to understand the growth that we're seeing, the employment that we're gonna see, the facilities issues we're gonna see in a very short period of time. The question is, if the escalation or the promotion process occurs, does the floater position disappear? Is that a 2025, 2026 ad?
Correct. I would anticipate the float position is gonna kind of go the same way the part-time officer position did. I mean, I cannot even imagine a time we'd ever go back to hiring part-time officers because of a revolving door.
Yep.
The float position is much the same way. I've worked it for 3 years for Madison. She's in some of the tough years right now of not knowing what your schedule is gonna be like. You want to burn out an officer fast, put them in a float position because you just don't know what's going on. So my primary goal is to get her out of that float position as soon as possible, have some stability, and this would definitely get us there.
Yeah, and if I remember back in like 2000, we had a lot of part-time, like
We
3
did.
part-time.
Yeah.
Maybe more, yeah, okay.
There was a larger pool to pick from back then too.
True, that's true. Any other questions? Anybody?
Move to approve?
Second.
Motion and second approval of the promotion to sergeant to deputy chief. Other questions or concerns? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion does indeed carry. We are on number 8, Scott?
Thank you, Mayor Rick, and thank you, city council members.
Appreciate it.
This is yet again our monthly commitment from Kinetic to come to the council and report on what's going on and give the council a feel for the status of the capital campaign for the community center. It's been an interesting month between last month and this month, to say the least. But we're pleased, at least in the overall direction and the formative stages that are happening for the campaign. Thus far, we've been able to meet with 2 campaign committee meetings, and we've got another committee meeting on Wednesday of this week. The attendance for this Wednesday's meeting is at least tentatively, if everyone shows up that says they're going to show up, it's going to be a good meeting. We're pleased with that. Kinetic, one of the commitments that we made to you was to put on a skilled team. We looked at the roster of consultants we had inside Kinetic. And one of the consultants we brought on was Janelle Johnson, who is one of the Kinetic's leadership team and is also the chief strategy officer for Kinetic as a company. And Janelle has been filling a role, helping us get back on track, making sure that we can give you an outline with goals and objectives and a timeline for the goals and objectives. Because just saying we're gonna raise 12 million, $14 million sometime, well, that doesn't give you what you need. It's the pathway to get to that 12 or 14 million, and being able to hold us accountable for waypoints along the way. So that way, if there needs to be a course correction, we want to know that there needs to be a course correction earlier rather than later. So we need to give you earlier deadlines. And that's where the chief strategy officer comes into place. And Janelle has been working on that, and we're getting those situations squared away. There's been a little concern about making sure that we have a working relationship with the YMCA of St. Cloud on grant applications to foundations. And we think that we've got some solutions for that. And we're meeting with Greg Jake on Thursday morning to go through those solutions. What we want to avoid is, again, we talked about this before, we want to avoid the opportunities to go to specific foundations to ask for grants for the St. Joe project as a standalone. But in that same light, we want to make certain that those foundations understand, because several of them are regional in their scope. They're not just St. Joseph focused in their scope. So we want to be able to address those regional aspects of our foundation requests. The fact that the St. Cloud members of the Y can come to St. Joseph and use the St. Joseph facility. St. Joseph members of the Y Community Center can go to St. Cloud and use the same facility. All of those members can use the water park, should the water park eventually be built. Our concern, though, is to get the community center in St. Joseph built. Our concern is to not get the water park built. That's someone else's job. We'll let them worry about that. But we want to make sure that the foundations that we're going to ask for 6 and 7-figure gifts understand that this is a regional ask, not just a city of St. Joseph, that the gift to St. Joseph not only allows the St. Joseph project to continue and grow at the rate that it needs to grow, but also fits into a bigger regional picture. So, long answer, short question. Short question is, how do we make sure that we're asking those foundations in an appropriate manner to get the money for St. Joseph, but yet not disregarding the fact that the St. Joseph Community Center fits into the regional picture. So we're working on that. We're getting that done with Greg. That meeting is Thursday morning. The other thing that Kinetic is looking at is the council. I've met with pretty much everybody at least once and a couple times for most members. The council knows that as a consultant with Kinetic, my heart is committed to this project, probably more than just for a contractual basis, because this is what I want to see the project succeed. And so in that light, and then I've got a lot of historical context with the project from the early days of 27 degrees below zero, having an open forum here where people came in with little sticky dots to put on, and I was there that night. So I've been with this a while, not nearly as long as some of you have, but I've been with this a while. So City Administrator David Murphy and Mayor Rick and members of the committee have approached Kinetic and said, we really want you to take a look at your staffing for this project and make sure that we are set up to succeed and we're set up to move forward on a very quick pace. Kinetic has agreed with both Mayor Rick and David and the committee that they're prepared to do that. And that process is moving forward. It's not clearly defined yet, but we're getting close to that definition. And thus far, Kinetic's leadership from the chief operating officer on down is committed to making this work and doing what we need to do to keep this process moving forward. And if that means changing staffing, either in skill sets or individual consultants working in the project, Kinetic is committed to making that happen. Kinetic is also talking with the mayor and the city administrator about making sure that we're acknowledging our part and our role in playing to move this forward in the best way possible. And we're committed to that as well. Mayor Rick, if you have any questions or council members, please take whatever
So
questions.
you do have a chairman now after, since Kevin has
We
stepped
do.
down?
Patty Wetterling has agreed to chair and met with Patty again this morning. She's very fired up
Yes, she
about
is.
it. And she's willing to go see donors with me. And we started putting together donor lists that Patty and I will go to see. The one thing, council member, that I really want you to hear, we understand that our contract with the city of St. Joseph is for campaign management, which means that Kinetic needs to be prepared to come along with you on individual solicitations with potential donors. So it's not just us dropping them in the lap of the committee members and saying, good luck. It's us coming along and making sure that we do everything that we can to prepare for that solicitation process and ensure that it's successful. And we're prepared to do that with Chair Patty. Patty has also put together a steering committee of 4 additional members that are providing leadership augmentation for the campaign committee. That's in addition to the rest of the committee. The committee has started to put together subcommittees so that there'll be a person that's responsible for small business, a person that's responsible for individual donors at this such and such range, and a person responsible for larger business and foundations. So the committee is actually moving much quicker than it has in a long time.
Good.
Any other questions? Bob?
So what I'm gathering here, I'm just kind of thinking out of the box here. By December, I assume, or I'm theorizing that there will be another request for a year extension contract with Kinetic.
I hope we earn that right, Bob. As it stands, excuse me, council member, I hope that we earn that right. As it stands right now, I don't know that I could in good faith present that to you without achieving specific benchmarks ahead of time and saying, here's what we've been able to do to catch up the project. And here's what we've been able to do to give you sufficient security that we're worthy of your partnership.
Okay,
Also,
I'll
the
take that.
question, oh, sorry.
Mhm.
Bob.
Good.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You were still on.
No, I'm done.
The questions that the mayor had the last time, were those resolved
Not yet.
with the contract? It's still work. Okay.
That's
Still
part of
working
the,
on it?
that's part of the process.
Okay,
That's the in process.
okay.
I can assure you that Kinetic is being very agreeable.
Anybody else? Very good. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Number 9, department, anything?
Just a couple of things real quick. One is, remember the League of Minnesota Cities annual conference is later this month. And we are getting pretty close to the finish line for getting everything ready for the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities annual conference here that will be co-hosted by Waite Park and St. Joseph's. And final thing is I will be taking a week vacation in mid-October.
I don't think so.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah, we didn't approve that. Wait, what? No, that's good. All right. Staff, anybody? Got anything? Very good. Number 10, mayor and council reports. Go
You've
ahead.
been involved with it more. with the Joetown Blocks. Looking forward to it this weekend. I hope everybody comes out for it, and I'm sure all of you are involved. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Dwight.
Most
Thank
of us
you.
are in the dunk tank, aren't we?
Everybody, yeah, you guys have been amazing. So, yes, of course, I think I'm the only one here that isn't going to be dunked, but I will be doing the derby races and taking the tickets. So needless to say, bring your money along. And then, of course, the car show. I'm really actually kind of excited about that, having that car show. And then Milk and Honey. The businesses are really coming together for this, and so I'm really excited about being able to kick off the first annual. So hopefully I didn't miss anything, but
No, it's kind of our first trial and error. We're gonna see what happens. We're pretty, the CVB, all the volunteers are pretty excited to see what happens. I mean,
well, and also thank you to the church.
Oh, yeah.
They have been wonderful in working with us. So
we'll see what happens. Yep. So we're all guessing
So
on how
far,
many
so
people are gonna
good.
show up.
yeah.
Everybody says it's gonna be well attended, the weather's supposed to be good, but nobody has any clue on what that means, how many people that is, so. Anyway. Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, Kevin.
So, Randy or, David, what was it gonna be the communication to the Hill Street people about delaying that street improvement?
That's next meeting, isn't it?
No, I wanna know what the plan
Yeah.
is.
So we're investigating a couple of things. One, what the impact would be from the financing side if you remove that portion of the project. So we need to understand what our options are to consider award and still proceed through the assessment process. So I'm anticipating that one of the next steps would have been, if we're proceeding with the project, we're going to have to process new resolutions with respect to the assessment hearing for the portion of the 2024 project that would proceed. And then if the city elects to send individual notices to the Morningside neighborhood, that portion of the project is being delayed. So we're still kind of sorting out some of the logistics of, can the project stand alone if we take out the Morningside project portion of the work. So we have the logistics of the city's financing. We have the logistics of whether the contractor will still honor their bid if we materially change the nature of the work. So we're still exploring those two options, but ultimately, David, unless you have a different opinion, we'd likely be sending a notice to the residents of Morningside if the project were to proceed through the hearing process, that a portion of the project is being delayed.
If, for me, the main hold up on it and why I'm a little bit leery to send something out here yet at this point with what we know now is for the fact that we're not 100% sure that the entire project will go through the rest of it, meaning for what we would take out. So if that's the case, then we would have to rebid the entire project, which would delay it for everybody. So we really want to make sure that we know what's happening with that before we send out any kind of communication, because I'd rather have it be correct rather than saying, well, we're going to potentially delay it, but then we delay it for everybody. So it's taking a little bit longer than I had hoped, but there's some new complications that are in there as well. We're looking at some other options for the piping that we still might be able to kind of work with this process. So in the timing of this process. So my answer is I'm not far enough in the process to really be comfortable that I'd be sending out truly accurate information yet.
So then my next item is David and Lori. We had a work session about the former township streetlight fees and stormwater sewer fees. Kind of like we just let that go. Is that still sort of in limbo, or are you teeing it up, or?
I can start this, and then if Lori wants to add anything, we can. We have talked about it at staff level here yet. And quite frankly, though, I've been a little bit reluctant on moving it forward here yet because of the other issues that we've had going on. I just didn't know if we really wanted to stir that yet.
Good.
I didn't know if the timing was really right for it yet.
Good answer. And then Nate, the
See how political?
wedding venue down by Bechtold's and the food hall. Do we have any updates on whether one or both of those projects are moving forward?
For the wedding event venue, I have not heard. If they're moving forward, I would assume that we'll get some communication hopefully soon. We have tried reaching out a few times. They are aware of the next steps in that process, including executing a developers agreement or moving forward by their CUP deadline, which is early September. For the Synergy site, they're 90% done, I believe, with the civils and then the interior design plans and that. So we're essentially awaiting those civils to be submitted, and then Randy's team will begin his portion of the review for the site plan. Their goal is to move ground after the 4th of July.
How long was their extension
Do
through?
it right on.
Was that
The
through August?
extension for their it was, I don't have that date in front of me. I don't recall offhand. I think it was 6 months past their, yeah, it's well past the time where they want to move ground. So we have it, we're aware of it, so.
I just had one thing. So at 8:10 on Saturday morning, I got a call from someone that wanted to get in the compost bin. So did I. Yeah. And so part of my mantra's been, if you don't, if you need something, you can't get a hold of it, you want to call me. So who's ever mayor after me, good luck with that. But I quickly called Ryan and he says it's not us, it's CNL. So I don't know what the communication chain is there, but we need to make sure that they're there at 8 o'clock. It's one of those things that those oddball calls. Okay, I don't have anything else. Anybody else? But
Randy, update on 75 bridge opening?
oh,
Well, I'm just curious if there's
No.
anything out there that
well, I
I'm not aware
heard, I
of.
heard it's delayed because of the rain.
So I haven't received that.
Yeah.
I'll reach out again to the county. I tried to drive by there on the way into the meeting to see if any of the traffic control signs had been adjusted, and it
They
looked
have.
like it was the status quo. So
Yeah.
I'll try to get an update and share it with the council.
Thanks, Randy. Anything else? Item 11,
Move to adjourn.
Second.
motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.